Well, hello there, and welcome to another episode of the Merge Roundtable. I'm joined today by Jim Durbin and Frank Kushner. Hello, gentlemen.
Morning.
Howdy.
You guys watched the Blacklist?
Yes.
Years ago, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
We think Peter Thiel might be Raymond Reddington.
Is it Thiel or Teal?
Teal?
Let's get into that today.
Yeah, we'll also settle that one later on. We've got some crypto stories, some stuff about FinCEN, some good news and some bad news in crypto. We're going to get into it. You guys went to HR South. We all went to HR Southwest this week.
Yes.
And so we're probably going to talk a little bit about that. The war on remote work. That was a topic at the show. And texting. We should talk about texting. There's a specific texting story that will come up later in the show. So anyway, stick around. After this, we'll get into it. Okay, so just before the show, we all got caught up on this story a little bit. But I found it yesterday on Surf and Hacker News, and it popped up on the feed. Insider.com has an exclusive story from an informant that says, or from a private source that says that Peter Thiel was an FBI informant for a number of years, starting in 2021. For those who aren't familiar or just kind of remember the name but don't know who it is, Peter Thiel is a billionaire dude who invests in a lot of tech things and also is politically active. Was part of
Founder of PayPal, Palantir.
Very, very active in PayPal Mafia, I guess, is the way to.
Huge libertarian, wants to build a city out in the ocean.
I would argue if he's libertarian truly, because he has some. I mean, obviously he's talking to the FBI. That's not very libertarian of him. But he's definitely got some very defined political beliefs. Was part of the Trump transition team as well, most notably. So anyway, I think when you dig into the story, like, it sounds like it's going to have like all these political aspects to it.
Right.
It really doesn't. It really
foreign-based Silicon Angle stuff. That's what the Verge was talking about.
Yeah, essentially, it sounds like he was just passing information that he would get basically under NDA when he was looking at investments about foreign or domestic tech companies that he thought might be of interest to the FBI, and then the FBI would cross-check.
Is that really an informant? Isn't an informant an actual specific? You've been paid. You're on the payroll. Is it now just anybody passing tips to the?
Well, he has like a CI number. There's a system like a online.
So he does have a CI. They're claiming he has a CI number.
Correct. Yes.
I didn't see that.
Hey, well, and again, I'm just making stuff up here, but at some point, they need to figure out whether or not you're real or not if you count. Because I can't imagine somebody that's worth north of $9 billion needs a check from, for coming and checking out the jury.
That's how the rich stay rich.
Neither did Raymond Reddington. See, he essentially weaponized the FBI.
So who's tougher, Superman or Mighty Mouse?
I mean, I think this could work to his favor. I mean, people like Raymond Reddington, I mean, mostly it's James Spader that they like, but, the character as well gets some love. I mean, this might be a way to rehab his image.
Yeah, it could be.
James Spader's image?
No, I'm talking about Peter Thiel here.
Oh, maybe. Okay, let's draw some dots. You see the light?
Yeah.
Like, you can see the energy hitting me, right? Do you remember when Bezos tried to look like Vin Diesel?
Yes, I do. There you go.
Maybe that's the new thing. Elon and Zuck are trying to get into some MMA match.
Right.
Perhaps that's what this was. He was a little jealous, had to get a little attention, decided, you know what? I watched the Blacklist.
I don't have a rocket. I need
Who
something.
do I look most like, and I don't want to lose weight or gain muscle?
Uh-huh.
James Spader, of course.
Yeah.
He's libertarian, so he probably smokes a little weed.
Yeah.
He might be able to afford James Spader as a body double. Speak for me.
Yeah, I don't know. To me, it's interesting. You guys just glanced over the article. Do you guys have any other thoughts aside from?
Not really. What I'll say is that our news is so colored one way or the other just because somebody's got some number affiliation. Who knows what that number's for? Social Security, they use it for everything as a code, right? Maybe that's just a number.
It would be
we
more
all know
shocking
that
if he was an FBI
we,
informant.
yeah, we all know.
A
yeah,
billionaire?
right.
I mean,
Yeah.
If Cuban talks to someone in the CIA, I'm not surprised.
Right. Right. So I'm kind of like non-event here.
Well, I mean, to me, it's also interesting
And,
that
and let's talk about it, right?
Yeah.
So he does have access to, like, stuff that we don't get to see, which might be pretty cool. And we do know that there's a lot of global tension and people want to reverse
Corporate
engineer
espionage is
anything.
real.
Don't you? Yeah. Don't you think that we probably want somebody that was in the know kind of checking out what was going on?
It almost seems like a
was really
positive.
kind of worried. Like, we know he is politically motivated and he loves America. So,
But the sources were really weird. That first source that did it is so...
yeah, you know a little bit about. Do you want to talk?
I know, because you'll probably sue me.
Yeah. Okay.
But one of those, it's put it this way, even if you read a bunch of right-wing media from 10 years ago, this guy still isn't trustworthy. So the fact that he's even in the story, it's kind of like
not Peter Thiel. You're talking about someone else.
no. One of the sources they talk.
The primary source that Insider actually names.
The simple fact, it's like seeing baked Alaska near anybody.
Right.
At a certain point, you're like, whatever's happening now is going to be fake, or it's going to be turned fake.
So I will say
else.
the report from Insider, the Verge one kind of condensed it, and that's what gave me the idea for the stupid Raymond Reddington angle.
No, I thought it was a good one. It wasn't stupid. I thought it was good.
But Insider, it might be maybe not stupid,
A little bit of a stretch.
a little silly, but the Insider post did go to great lengths to say they didn't just take Johnson. I don't want to get sued by. They didn't take Johnson's word for it.
It's Business Insider, which is a huge intelligence information media outlet.
Well, it wasn't that particular. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
The whole thing, though, it's worse than Forbes Online, in all fairness.
But also, Insider said it was
Forbes, and you go Forbes Online. Yeah, they know what you're saying.
Yeah.
It's like a C-class Mercedes. Is it really?
Is it though?
They did appear to adhere to some kind of.
They sure they
standards
looked it
on
up, but there's always that stuff gets so shady and it gets so turned around.
I'll just
Who
have
knows?
AI check it for me.
right.
We're going to start hearing that
Which
so much.
in Congress today, moments ago, they said that AI is enabling terrorism. So an
Is it climate terrorism?
FBI witness in Congress, yeah. No, not climate terrorism. Although, I mean, ask Greenpeace, I suppose.
Wait a second. I think they're throwing around that way. It's like that commercial now about Rockstar. I think they're using the term a little too
Loosely,
Yeah.
Well, it's powerful, because how are you going to come back from that?
What was the article you sent me? And I was a little offended because, I mean, it's not like it's the same stuff that we saw in video from the problems we're having in the Middle East. And they're calling them terrorists. I'm like, okay, all right, we need to stop. We need to take a step back for a minute.
Everything's terrorism. I mean, Elizabeth Warren this week, $84 million has been funneled to Hamas through cryptocurrency, according to Elizabeth Warren and several other senators that co-signed this letter. If you ask any expert in the industry, including Chainalysis, the organization that everybody turns to figure out where money is flowing through in cryptocurrency, the number is somewhere less than $1 million.
Here it is.
For all of terrorism.
Let me be clear. If you're going to give money to people, you do it with pallets of cash on the back of an airplane, not through crypto. That's the only acceptable way to send money to the Middle East. Just so you know, that's my stand.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're gonna, I'm trying to find the exact number that was.
Yeah, that's just a war on crypto.
This is all choke point 2.0 stuff. Elizabeth Warren hasn't gotten the memo that they're giving up, I think.
The interesting thing is that you pointed out, is this tied into the whole mix thing?
Well, it's related. Yeah, for sure. So this was the other related piece of news, is that FinCEN, which is the organization that enabled my prosecution for using Bitcoin, has come out and said that mixers are money laundering.
Which means Bitcoin is money.
Well, yeah. This is the interesting thing. They say it's money laundering. I say, money you say? Which has some interesting implications, what you noted immediately. But just for those who don't know what a mixer is, It is a form of privacy, to use a mixer. It is, whether or not we should be allowed to have that privacy is a matter of debate by intelligent people. But essentially, you're saying I have one type of crypto that I want to exchange for another type of crypto, or it can be same to same, could be Ethereum to Ethereum or Bitcoin to Bitcoin. We're going to take I'm going to send it to you, Jim, but I don't want the world to know. So I'm going to take my $50 worth of Bitcoin. I'm going to put it in a giant container with $1 billion other worth of Bitcoin in there, and you're going to get somebody else's $50. Who knows who?
So you can't track it on the ledger to see.
Right. Exactly. It goes into a giant pot inside of a smart contract, and you get it from the other side.
Sounds like a securities dark pool.
It could be. Maybe it's an SEC thing. Who knows?
But what you're saying is it's money?
But what I'm saying is money. And what happens if it's money? What happens if all of crypto is declared money? Taxation is affected, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, which means no crypto taxes. So, and wouldn't the Department of Treasury be the kind of agency that would be in charge of like determining what should be taxed, what shouldn't be taxed? Right?
I mean, better than asking us.
I mean, I'm just saying, like, this
I
is
feel like they answered their own question.
this feels pretty definitive. Like,
I
this
feel
is,
like there was a left hand.
Yeah.
And it was doing something.
yeah.
And then there was another one on the right. We'll call it the right hand.
Yeah.
And they didn't know what they were doing. That's a good analogy. We should use that more.
But
I know. I just came up with it. I don't know if you guys have ever heard that before.
it,
But,
defi- it
and we
definitely.
should apply it to the government and large corporations. Wow, that's some real.
So what you're
That's two good ideas today.
You're saying, I understand what you're saying, but the problem here is that the Department of Treasury is the same hand for both. Right? They're the
big
ones that
department.
determine taxation, like what should be taxed by determining what is money. And they're also the one that's making these rules about what money laundering is.
I imagine a guy sitting in an office watching Bloomberg or something, watching one of his subordinates or somebody come out and they're doing a report on it, and he's just putting his head in his hand.
I don't know if you guys have watched the interview with Lex Friedman and Jared Kushner.
I heard it was a thing.
It was pretty spectacular. But one of the things that I found fascinating was that you've got a time value, like a time premium. They've got 4 years to get stuff done. And it seems like they got a whole lot of nothing done in this first presidency. And if there is a change in power, all of this goes away again. So I kind of feel like, what are they going to do in a year anyway?
Right. They're just trying to throw things against the wall right now while they've got a moment.
Yeah. You know, let's throw a bunch of irons in the fire and see which one survives to the next administration. Which one can we hang on the next administration to be a headache?
By throwing a bunch of the two, if there is a change and someone restricts it, now they have another media event to complain about it. Dismantling the rules, the whole Republicans go through regulations.
I mean, we don't even have
So you throw 10,000 rules on the books in the last day, and you make the next administration spend their days going through and undoing them. So, yeah, it's like executive orders really shouldn't have been used the way we've been using them.
Huh.
That's a 20-year-old argument.
I think part of it might also be in response to the SEC appears to be losing its front in the Choke Point 2.0 war.
What does that mean?
So everything that has been happening that's anti-crypto in the last, I don't know, 5-10 years, whatever it's been, that since this has been conceptualized as a thing amongst the echelons of power, is that every agency is trying to slow down crypto adoption by just making adversarial laws, not necessarily trying to root them in any type of sensibility.
Your bank
or
shuts your
sanity.
account off if they find out you're using Coinbase, which kind of ruins the whole point of Coinbase.
Right. SEC is making sure everything is called security. FinCEN's calling everything a currency. All these things that are just happening at once that don't even jive with one another. Right. SEC has had a string of losses. This week in particular, they lost their appeal on the library thing, on the Ripple case. They lost the appeal on the Bitcoin spot ETFs, which looks like all those are going to go through now. And they didn't lose on the library case, but library ran out of money to appeal it. So they're going to actually, they've been forced into bankruptcy because they didn't have the bankroll.
You know what I find
war
fascinating
chest
is like if
that
you
is-
take a look, it's been sitting in the mid 20s forever, for a long time now, right?
It's almost the 30 today.
And then the minute that there was like speculation that BlackRock might get it, like they said, oh, it's approved, it shot straight through the roof again, right? And then no, let's slow it down. Let's sort of back it up. Let's walk that back for a minute. And it dipped, but it didn't dip back. There's a lot. I think there's a lot. We've been in this consolidation pattern. You can see where people want it to go,
Right.
up or down. Like in the stock market, you're now seeing that people are starting to get negative. And now it's starting to do what people said that it was supposed to do when there was a recession, which
counter
is
to inflation,
counter to inflation, like
right.
gold, right? And now you're seeing that, and you're seeing
Right.
gold act like
It
gold
should be,
as
yeah.
well, right? So we have some really interesting vectors happening right now that I think are pretty interesting, and I think that like there's just a lot of people institutionally that do actually want crypto to go up, because there's been this new mark to market even in crypto equipment. You're seeing the people that were the crypto bros that blew up, didn't know how to risk control and can't survive. And now they have all this equipment that they can't do anything with because they had bad energy contracts or whatever. And now we see it daily that people are actually, well, we're going to use it in our data center. We're going to pick things up for pennies on the dollar and run this game. So they've remarked their basis lower on the backs of the people that blew out. And now you see people like, ooh, we're starting to make money again on mining,
Right.
right? Because their input costs are much lower now in a new company than they were in an existing company with an existing contract. So
Right.
we see that base, I think, breaking through on the upside, and that's exciting.
Can you talk about the Fidelity stuff, or is that still?
Well, Fidelity has a pretty interesting program. They have been working on cryptocurrency. It's no secret that they've been putting out digital asset publications.
Yeah.
The founder, the founding family, the person running the founding family has been very open about their adoption and their belief in crypto. They've been mining since the beginning of time. I was so delighted to have met Uri and Timmer, and he actually told me that, like, in the beginning of time, Abby actually had like a crypto miner in her office. I guess that was before they were actually loud, right?
Right.
But Fidelity's been a big adopter of it, and they have been planning a major program in order to allow financial advisors to, for our clients who absolutely want to have crypto, to be able to buy and sell certain types of crypto. I'm not going to throw the rest of it out, but yes, Fidelity is also in the hunt, just like all the others that we talked about, Franklin Templeton, T. Rowe Price, and Fidelity. These are huge companies that never lost their enthusiasm for the currency.
So I would just
The asset.
for the real crypto.
The money?
peeps.
Is it money now? I don't know. I mean,
We'll find out.
Yeah,
but maybe I let the cat out of the bag too early on that, and I should just shut up and let them reclassify it as money, and then
somebody will figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so my question, for I guess for the benefit of like the super geeks in the audience that are crypto deep down the rabbit hole, how do they differentiate? Because XRP, Ethereum, and Bitcoin are basically the big three that institutional likes to look at. It's the big three tickers that are on Bloomberg and CNBC. How do they differentiate them, or do they look at them in the same asset class? Why is it always those three?
I don't see XRP as much as I see Ethereum and Bitcoin so much. I feel like one is treated more as like gold, like a commodity, and the other one is treated more like oil, right? One
Right.
that you actually use and build stuff on, Ethereum, and then you've got your pure play commodity, which is Bitcoin.
Right.
I don't really hear much. I mean, there's so many others that also have tremendous amounts of money. Like, I'm blown away by, the treasuries and all the different stable coins out there, which are actually, I think, probably, those are the real interesting ones,
There's some interesting tether news this week too.
Okay.
I mean, not a
go
huge
there.
discussion point, but it's just interesting. They announced that they are going to have real-time auditing of all their underlying assets starting next year.
But isn't that the whole point? right? If
No.
you have, but if you, my point is like with blockchain, aren't
Yeah.
you supposed to be able to see that transparency because it's a single ledger? You should be able to parse that data pretty
Not
quick.
necessarily with a stable coin, right? So you can see where it exists, but that doesn't necessarily, when you're talking about an asset-backed crypto, you don't necessarily have, because it's still real-world assets. Those things aren't on-chain.
Right.
They're just being represented. It's a derivative.
But didn't you say, I thought Tether was the one that actually had to buy actual
Yes,
like,
that
US
is true. They had to buy
securities.
US
So that should be fairly easy to keep track of that one. at the very least.
right, but that's not all they have. But they, they're the ones that've been, because they're the biggest, they've been targeted with a bunch of audits over the years, and so they're just saying, look, we're just going to build a system to live track it, have a dashboard, you guys can see everything in live real time. But yeah, it is in essence a derivative. That type of stablecoin is a derivative, and so that you don't necessarily see what the underlying asset is in real time by default. But still an interesting development, and one of the more, like you said, exciting cryptos in the space because of how big they're getting and what they're having to do. Yeah. Okay.
How about the the North Korean remote workers?
Oh, I was gonna transition to the HR stuff because we got some work from home topics.
Well, I was the one thing that I threw out there. That was what I was talking about, the
Yeah.
terrorist comment that was earlier. It's like, okay, so now they're calling remote workers terrorists.
Yes, yes. Well, so the FBI, they've been in the news, in our news a lot today. Let me see if I got this.
Maybe it's just consistency bias. It's like the way I see Kias everywhere because my sister has one.
Yeah. The FBI and the DOJ say thousands of IT workers sent by North Korea to work remotely for U.S. companies using false IDs have sent millions of wages back to North Korea. They say don't trust recruiters. The FBI says this now.
I've been saying it for years.
I thought you might have a thought about that, Jim.
It is actually a concern that has always been an issue. We had a lot of the H-1B contractors 15, 20 years ago where you basically have a company to call. The person doing the interview over the phone was not the person that would show up on day one. So that was actually when a problem. Giant companies, contracts, all of a sudden I'm going to throw 400 people at a problem. You didn't know who was actually showing up. So that was a bit of an issue. Now you have the whole overemployed thing where it's people having 2 or 3 jobs, and are they actually working? So what it comes down to is if you're saying that remote workers are a problem, you're saying that you don't know how to manage. That's what it really is.
Yeah, that's
100%. I have managed remote workforces. I have caught them doing good and bad things. They're either doing the work or they're not. And what it is that managers don't know how to manage. Their whole point now is KPIs and productivity because they don't know how to manage that remote stuff. They're trying to force people back in the office. Was it Nike that's going to do 4? Now they're 4 RTO.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nike said they were doing that as well. It's a big push, and so it's just a question: who cracks first? The amount of money, was it $5,000-$10,000 a year? You're spending more when you're going remote. Commutes suck. I just spent 5 days driving around Dallas. Some of it for fun, some others. But when you're 3 hours on the road a day, there's a change. And not to mention, gas is $4 in my truck.
Yeah, it's a whole different world
I
now.
forgot what it was like. I was like, oh, this really sucks. And I'm actually okay with the idea of some commutes, but at a certain point, I don't think companies are being realistic because there has to be some kind of change. And what they've done is they've fired all the remote people, now going hybrid and pushing. But if you apply for a job and you put remote, like 50% of applications are remote on LinkedIn for chasing less than, I think, 15% of jobs.
Wow.
So it really becomes a question. I mean, part of it, too, is people hit remote and they're not thinking through it. I think the whole North Korea thing is part of something that's happening now, which is applications are now worth money. There's a big change in our industry for cost per application because our budgets have gotten bigger and the costs are getting higher. All of a sudden, all the fraud people that have been playing on pay-per-click and other advertising over the years are now starting to focus on the human resources function. And this is a challenge for us because we've never had big budgets before. The idea that 30, 40% of all of our clicks are fake should terrify us. We don't even know that's a thing. We are seeing that change, though. I was talking to someone the other day, and they pointed out that they made a post, and 300 applications came in the first day, and 95% of them were unqualified. So it's basically people have written a script, they've spun up a profile, and they just go out to LinkedIn and search something, and they go to their board, and they click, and it applies to 500 jobs. It doesn't matter to them if it's the right job or not.
Ouch.
This is important to us because at the same time, other people looking for jobs are trying to get feedback, actually get hired, taking their time. When you've swamped an HR function like this, there's nothing we could do. When you go back to what you've always done, who do I know, who are the agencies I know, who's recruiters, because at least they're giving me real candidates. So you've got this huge problem of too much fraud or too many, it's just too easy to apply. Okay, well, I can't handle that volume. I'm going to shut off my job posting and I'm going to talk to real people. And now you have the issues of bias and discrimination and different cost because everybody wanted it easy. And easy and cheap is bad for you. Let's say that again, children. Easy and cheap is bad for you. Easy and cheap money corrupts you. Easy and cheap drugs are bad for you. Easy and cheap applicants destroy your ability to have a quality experience. This whole faster, better, automated world, I think, is going to lead us back to a lot of the old ways, which is great for a guy like me. I know what the old ways were. I can pick up the phone, talk to someone, shake their hand. What do you do when it's just trash out there? Because everybody's just trying to do something on a side hustle.
So
Brutal.
on the talent acquisition side, something's been bothering me for a while, and I know I could probably use this machine that I use for cat videos to figure even the answer out, but I'm going to ask you anyway. We put a lot of stock on the financial services industry on, the ADP reports, employment reports, and the numbers are always wrong.
Right.
They come back with revisions up or down, but I remember when ADP was the only game in town. They were the only electronic one that the majority that everyone
ADP
used,
and
which
BLS.
is why. Yeah, and so now it's not just ADP. There's Indeed. There's all these other people that have the job postings, and we know that some of these postings aren't real, and we know that some of these jobs weren't actually hired. I mean, I tried to hire some people on there and asked for qualified leads, and of course none, right? But the same thing. But how do we know what that number is, and why do we still use it, or is there a better game in town? Why are they using ADP still? Does ADP aggregate maybe? I don't know.
Well, ADP is not the jobs. For them, it's the number of payrolls. So it's the number of W-2s. So they're able to extrapolate based on the number of W-2s what's going up and what's going down.
And so they're a sample size.
Yeah, they look at their data because they're so big, because Paychex and ADP, I think, are the two biggest ones for payrolling all of those. So they've got so much data they can extrapolate and say, in general, this is what this area is, this is how many jobs. The BLS is a household survey. They're just calling some people, hoping they pick up the phone and saying, did you get a job today? It's a really horrific thing. And then they just add the numbers, and then they're easy to manipulate and change over time. So the BLS data is the best data we have, but it's still terrible because it would be too expensive to actually survey every person at every time at every point. So it's not even a crack on the BLS. It's just that it's the best thing we have. ADP was the counter. Because if ADP says we're up 200,000 and BLS says it's 400,000, and now you've got the problems of playing games. Do you believe anything anymore? I've been looking at ADP and BLS data for 20 years now. We used to post it on our blogs. We used to talk about it. It tells you if the market's going up or down, are people getting more jobs. And the problem now is the revisions. The revisions are so big, you can't believe it anymore.
That's what I'm saying. Like, how are you figuring out what's right and what's wrong based on the revisions, and also based on are they double counting the people that are on payroll over here? But is there a way for them to
3 jobs? That counts as 3 W-2s to ADP.
So wouldn't ADP? Yeah, but wouldn't ADP also have that information, be able to factor out? Is that part of the revision?
I'm sure they do, but
couldn't they let the employers know that this guy's a full-time employee at 2 other places, right?
There's some PII stuff in there that is a different problem, which would be terrible to catch up on that. That's the issue, is that they're restricted by some cases. And what's the value of it? The value of it is to have a headline. ADP does this. You can trust it. ADP is trusted. They've been doing the data for a long time. You can give your payroll service to them. That's why they're doing it. In terms of accuracy, what are they going to do if it's wrong? It's not really a concern. Not for them, at least.
Except to Wall Street.
But what's the value? That's one of its that's the thing. It's to Wall Street, right? It doesn't really affect us, because if we're hiring or not hiring, there's still somebody's going to be hiring. And so it's just how much harder it is to find those people. And we use the data. We don't use the data. We use the data usually to explain why something worked or didn't work. But I don't know what the value is overall. What's the value of giant stuff? It's pretty much Wall Street and government. The average person should ignore most of that, because if you go, oh my God, ADP says the rolls are down, there's unemployment claims are up, you're not going to go apply, because you're like, what's the point?
Yeah, it's Thanksgiving. Let's go buy a turkey.
Or it's doing really well. Maybe they should fake the numbers and juice them a little bit, because then everybody gets excited, spends a little more, and goes out and gets more job. Because, I mean, it's a weird thing. It's just like the market. Is it psychology or is it facts? If you delve too far into it, maybe you don't want to know what's underneath if the entire economy is built on consumer spending.
Whole world is built on America's consumer spending.
Maybe we shouldn't ask these questions then.
Right. Don't ask questions you don't want the answers to.
Maybe you shouldn't go into the kitchen, Frank. Maybe just sit outside, have another glass of wine.
Yeah,
we have a sports ball on TV for you, but don't go into the kitchen.
Well, to the point on ending the war on remote work, which was a huge U.S. News editorial this week, and it's not unique. It's just one of the more popular articles from the week. You and I and Sohail were having a conversation in the office yesterday, I guess, about like the difficulties to the economy that were going to come from the end of use of commercial real estate, which is the larger effect of the trend to remote work. So you want to go into any of that, or you're going to kind of reiterate what your thoughts were?
Yeah, I just, if you take a look at, you can see it on both sides. Like as an employee, I don't care that you own this piece of property. I can do my job just as well from home as I could do from whatever, asset that you purchased and you think that I need.
Yeah.
As long as I have a phone, a computer, something to write on, maybe, I can do my job from anywhere, right? And that's understandable from an employee's point of view, but very short-sighted as an employee's point of view as well, because we do have this asset as a company, and your job is to help the company produce and survive, right? And unfortunately, in a company, that may be one of their largest assets, especially if they own it. And if you don't come in and use it and they lose the value of that asset, you're going to be losing the value of your job too. So, while I understand comfort, I also understand trying to keep the organism alive. So I'm kind of torn. I feel like we as individuals need to step up and work a little harder to try to build our company back up and survive this, because really it has potential to be very damaging to the financial services industry, not just the financial services, the whole framework of the country.
They built a house of cards by doing 99-year leases, getting parking lots, putting their money into it, and now that they can't keep their downtowns up for all the folks, now they're freaking out and they want us to bail them out again. Is that basically?
Well, it's not that they want us to bail them out. I mean, they are us, right? They are the ones that write the check. They, for better or worse, if you don't work for them, you're going to work for someone else that has the exact same problem. So ultimately, based on the way that we're set up as a country and as it's a problem.
Well,
and
we
it's a
had this
problem
argument.
that individually we should probably consider more than just, I don't want to.
But are we for free markets or aren't we, though? That's the question, right? If we're for free markets, it's not as if money is going away and people that invest money are going away.
Right.
We had this argument
what
for
what
electric.
has to change, what's going to have to change is the way that we can change the type of asset that it is, right?
Okay.
We all know we need more places for people to live.
Absolutely.
So changing it from a commercial property to a residential property, that's a permitting thing. That is what? Nothing more than bureaucracy. And we know that bureaucracy tends to be very slow. And bureaucracy will probably take longer to address this issue than we have time to fix it fiscally. That's my point.
So let's put that in the exact same argument of why inflation rates are high. You're saving too much. You're not spending enough. You're not working hard enough. You have to feel pain before those interest rates come back down.
Correct.
The consumer has to.
Right.
But the asset class doesn't have to feel any pain before they start making better decisions.
So the asset class can't, right? It can't because it's constrained by what it is. You can't pick it up and move it, right? So you can't move it from one location to another. You can't make it the problem of a different state. Right. So if you take a look at New York, New Jersey, and parts of California that are crying about the SALT taxes and the deductions from that, that was a big part of the reason you live in New York City. It's not because you want to live in that 600 square foot hovel that you're paying $5,000 a month for. That's just a place you hang your head. That's because you want all the other stuff.
Right.
But a lot of that other stuff is going out the window because of online and stuff. And then so if you want to convert, that big office unit to residential, you can't, because those same places were also very difficult to get assets built, and so now they don't want it to be easy to change, and so it's just a fact of life. for a lot of parts of the country, it's probably not a
But
big
there's
deal.
always things you can do, and this is the real rub of it, because I'm definitely sympathetic to the issues of commercial real estate, and there's a value in being in the office, because you know who wants to be in the office? People under 30 who need to learn and grow and be mentored, and older folks too who need to learn how to mentor and grow. There is a value in being together.
There's a sociological concept called the third place. You heard of this?
Yeah, it was Starbucks, right?
No, basically, it's older than the concept of Starbucks, but it's the idea that there's the first place is the home, second place is work, the third place is Dunkin' Donuts, or a barber.
Right. Sorry, we were saying Dunkin' for our listeners in the Northeast.
Yes. Or barber shops, or
Right.
you know, the park or something like that. And so you can get what you're talking about from third places, or some sociologists are trying to institute the word fourth place for like co-working spaces.
Right.
But really it's a form of a third place. You can get that community and mentorship through, it doesn't have to be through a
That's like the
centralized
argument
ownership.
for homeschooling, though, too. And everybody goes, why are you socializing? Yes, you can. It doesn't mean you are. Just because you can. Some people need to be there. They need to be in an office with their ass beaten every day to do work.
But third
That
place
is
is
a
not
reality.
third place is not. It's not just something that somebody came up with as an answer to offices. It's a sociological phenomenon that's being described. So people are going to go to third places as a natural function of being human.
But before we get all of that, let's get back to the asset class. Because here's the problem. I need you in the office. You have to do it.
Okay.
Why are they saying it? Are they saying it because their prices are going down? No, that would be admitting weakness. Are they saying it because they're just missing people? Because what happens is I have to go into the office, and what do I do in the office? I'm on a freaking Zoom call with 10 different offices.
Right.
Why am I going in and sitting in a cubicle to sign into a Zoom? They used to have all that stuff like Indeed and Google. They had all these, here's your food. But those are necessities. They did that because you can't get anywhere in Austin. If you went to lunch, you'd lose 2 hours in the middle of the day.
Yep.
So instead of saying we're going to make this useful, we're going to spend our times actually making it useful for you to be in the office. We're going to have better management while you're there. Not just what did you do on your TPS reports, but rather we're actually going to make it worthwhile. We're going to get that value of being in space, your third place or your second or whatever. We're going to change the way we manage to be better managers. Instead, they're just like, we're going to fire you or you come back to the office, and we're going to have the same terrible office culture because 30 years ago we stripped every manager out. We leaned everybody. We refused to train anybody. This is, I don't have a lot of sympathy for companies that don't fix that. I actually don't mind the office. I have friends who are ecstatic to be back in 3 or 4 days a week. But the whole point is they're building decent cultures. Saying you have to come back for the value of the company is, how about you make it worth their while?
So going back to that thought process, I like the idea that we're changing it from why to how, right?
Yeah.
We know that we need them back. Why? Who knows? Here's my thought process is that just like any office asset, you have to have a certain amount of people using it in order to be able to write it off, right? So if you have a jet plane, like a corporate jet, and it's just one guy using it, is that really a corporate asset, right? So it could be the same thing, and then you got different classes of real estate. So it could be any number of things. The reason that they do that, like not be able to write it off, maybe a certain amount of people need to be occupants of the property.
There are
Who
huge
knows?
tax things.
So we know, we don't know why, right? But we know how do we get it back in. Instead of why, it's like air conditioning. Like life was a lot worse when it's like, why is it so hot? Well, how about we change it and figure out how to make this thing cooler, right? So same thing. How do we change the asset itself to be more conducive to using it, I guess. But that would probably be quicker than trying to fix a lot of that other stuff. It's just. Well, I don't want to use that basic complicated, but it's the
same conversation you have when you have to try to solve every major systemic problem. Is you got to approach it from a systemic level. Like you can't change user behavior just because you really jump up and down and yell at them.
And if you lie,
but you have to change where the incentives are.
It's because we're a family here, and you've got to come in. Well, how about you just say, we need people in the office because there are
For a
tax
family,
implications.
I need $20, Dad.
Okay, so if you're looking again, I like to say that you start out with the human, then you go to the organization, right? So as an organization, our human body, it's like something fails, the rest of it fails, right? And so the same thing with the corporation. We know that 80% of the population, hopefully, is mission driven, doesn't really want to do anything over and above, but they're on board. And then you've got 5% that can influence 15%. So you try to manage out that 5% somehow. So the 15% stay with the 80%, right?
Right.
But you still have that 5%. And that 5% is what's causing this drama. We have, whether it's regulation or anything else, there's some percentage of management that needs to pass on their skills to someone else that's eventually going to become management, right? So if you can, and I kind of believe that a lot of that needs to be passed on person to person.
I 100% agree with you. So then why do they not do that?
I don't know. So I think we're going to have to shave out classes of people that have to show up at the office. You know what? You come into the office, you participate in the defined contribution plan. I
think a lot of it's executives travel a bunch. They're doing different things. And they do go into the office and they don't see the hustle and the bustle and the flow that they remembered when they hired a lot more people, by the way. Because that's the question with AI. You need less and less people. You need to be more productive. You're doing different things.
Sure.
You're never going to get 50 people in a room working on something with the flow. That's just not going to be. Companies aren't going to be built like that anymore. So is it these guys are dinosaurs who need to step aside because they haven't figured out it's not going to be like Kansas anymore, or do they need to begin making their change? That's why it's because the big issue is that they just go back to the office and make no changes. The asset class that I keep calling the asset class, but the fact that assets are a major part of our economy, that stuff's baked in and has been, and it was worked for a long time. We have the
but
rules.
everything changed, right? Everything changed.
It does, and we're going to have to deal with some of that. But the idea that somehow they haven't screwed up is the issue. Until you acknowledge your fault, you can't be repentant. And so I have zero sympathy for somebody who's like, we have to do this because the company, even if tax incentives allowed you to charge less, and that's why you've been successful. I mean, that actually is a big, hey, we got $10 million from the government by having people in this office here in Plano, and that's the way we've been able to sell our products for slightly less, and that's why we captured 40% of the market. So that's a real argument. But if your argument now is like, and I don't know what to do now, if you're not coming in, I'm like, well,
Figure it out.
You played a game. It's like, electric vehicles, we're going to subsidize $20,000 of them. Ooh, electric vehicles are great. We don't have enough graphite for them. No one thinks through that. So I think they have to take a hard look at themselves, and they're not going to do that till they feel pain. And the only pain you feel when you own something
Is when that thing goes down in value.
maybe 5-10% of those buildings needed to, like they're doing in San Francisco, where
You're
they're
letting the lease
selling
go back.
at a
They're just letting go of the lease.
Yeah, they're throwing the keys back.
how do you
But no one wants
slowly
that.
do
That's the
that?
whole thing. Is
Yeah.
like the people that actually own the majority of that real estate aren't necessarily the ones that are using the real estate, right? These are like legacy families that have amazing amounts of money, and they do what's known as
pension funds?
extend and pretend, right?
Yeah,
That's
I
the
mean-
real estate game, right? That's like, I'll refinance it at this high level. I've got the cash flow to do it until things get better.
So it's about if
The
it's
banks don't want to own it. They don't want to go there and
of
lock the
course.
doors, unlock the doors, and do the maintenance required to keep it from
Falling
going into
into
disrepair.
disrepair.
Yeah. So
so the banks are the ones that ultimately going to feel the pain?
yes,
So
yeah,
then-
and most of them are the regional banks, right? Most of
Okay.
those regional banks, you've got the CB Richard
Commercial real
Ellis.
estate's primarily regional.
Yeah, because you've got the JP Morgans. They're going to do the cream of the crop, Class A type stuff. But real estate is a local knowledge kind of a deal, right? And so you see a lot of these banks that are doing it are the local banks, the regional banks that actually know Dallas or know Fort Worth or know Austin or know, they know that industry. But that means also that then you have, a certain amount of geographical location risk, right?
I mean, as we discovered at the top of the show, there's an immense amount of regulatory capture with the banking industry.
No.
We discovered that?
Regional
Good on
banks.
us.
Yeah, I mean, like Columbus discovered America. So if maybe they should use some of that regulatory capture they have to cut through some of that bureaucracy and get some of that real estate reclassified. I mean,
It is hard.
Banks have that ability.
It's so wrapped up. And we had the argument about ride sharing a couple
Yeah.
years ago and autonomous driving. Remember the EHAV conference I went to? One of the concerns is it's not just the insurance of who owns the car of a self-driving car. It's that people own cars. And so we had all these people not getting their licenses, and we had friends who were like, I don't even bother, I just use Uber now. It's like, that's great. In case a hurricane comes, you can Uber your way to New Orleans. What do you do when you don't have the money? But the problem was, one of the things they really worried about is that parking lots are set on 99-year leases. And they're built on the idea of regular income coming in, and they're sold to pension funds, and they're sold to big things, because that's how cities were built. If you stop making cars and it's an autonomous car that you're ordering like an Uber, and 10, 20, 30%, where are people parking? If they're not parking, guess what happens to the price of commercial real estate?
Rideshare.
Because it underwrites a large portion of what's going on.
Yeah.
So ride sharing could destroy commercial real estate. That was the argument at the time. But it was also just it's always something, right?
Well, I kind of like the idea of a fractional ownership of a car that, like, when I'm not, okay, I get out and then all of a sudden it goes somewhere else and picks up someone else while I'm at dinner, and then another car comes and picks me up and drives me home. That'd be nice.
Yeah, it seems like a really good thing if you have the time and the money. But if that destroys commercial real estate, is it worth it?
I mean,
somebody's got to park in those lots. We have to get people into the parking lots, or else the commercial real estate crashes. How is that different than return to office?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very, very
It's
similar.
like Zoom demanding people return to office. Which they did.
Yes, they did.
Did they really?
Yes, they did.
Their corporate offices.
Yes, they did.
That's funny. That's
It's
good.
really bad.
It's just big questions. I think the real question is we're sitting around talking about this. Obviously, people have their discussions that actually have all the power and the money. Are they having these real discussions? Or are they just trying to get by day to day? And I think the problem is what we've seen in government and industry and others is that they're just trying to get by. They've lost their strategic long-term vision. The reason to them to get people in the office is because we've done it. I don't think they're sitting around. They're few. Sure, the finance guys are absolutely looking at it. The real estate guys are looking at it. At the same time, if you try to call a real estate agent in St. Louis to buy a building, they don't call you back. That's something just have the guy try to buy it. So you would think that all the people in the world right now trying to call you, if you're in commercial real estate, you would think you would take that call and call back, but they're just sitting around. And maybe it's because they've gotten too lazy, or they don't. I don't know. But
They're not in the office.
That seems. How do you miss that call?
So I think there's an issue, and this goes back down to the micro from the large side. But you talked about how Zoom wanted people to return to the office, and it made me think of this.
So weird.
So like, you've got the elder portions of our society that are like entrenched and are unable to see the writing on the wall and unable to make strategic decisions because of it.
Are you talking about our political leadership being over 80?
I'm talking, yeah. Well, the octogenarian class of rulers is also problematic. But it's similar to this similar problem, yeah. And then you've got like the young portion, the younger half of our population, I would say younger than Gen X, so it's primarily millennial and younger, that are afraid of phone calls and are unprepared for in-person interactions, but they're very adept at text communications.
Right.
And prefer everything. So it's like it's two cultures within one that have to coexist at least for some period of time moving forward.
There's a great story about, this is very early for the millennials when they were still in college,
Yes.
about you get in a fight with your roommate. So you run down to the computer lab because you didn't have phones at that point.
Yeah.
And they would argue with each other over IM because they didn't want to do it live. And like, we laughed at that. Oh, these poor little fragile snowflake millennials, blah, blah, blah. But it's not that. It's not, one, there is a fear of confrontation. There's certainly a lack of that, and people being able to just take their lumps. No one wants to take any kind of pain for any kind. No consequences for any action. That's kind of been the pitch. And you don't see that. You know, there's just, if you see it in culture and people don't get in trouble, it's like these TikTokers walking around messing with someone, then getting hit by a bat and going, oh, I can't believe I got hit. I'm like, I can't believe you haven't been hit a lot more.
Right.
Right. But texting is an interesting thing because we'd argued about that. When we first came out, I did a piece about texting. It's 2010 or 11. And I asked a millennial, I was, why do you text? And he goes, because if I'm busy, why I don't want to pick up the phone. I'm doing something. So it actually made sense that he was texting to set something up. And I was like, oh, okay, you guys are being efficient. You're really efficient.
Right.
Over time, though, you learn something else. If you're texting people, and you can see this in all the massive amounts of passive aggression that's out there, someone texts you and you don't text right back. How many do your wives or your friends get mad at you that It's been 10 minutes. What are you doing? I need to talk to you. I need to talk to you. I need to talk to you. So what happens is by not answering, you're making
Pavlovian.
them because they're in their heads. And so this is the same thing. We were talking about road rage. Road rage happens because when you get in your car, that's freedom. You are in charge of what goes on. And if you can't go 2 miles an hour faster in traffic, you're angry. You're screaming at you idiot. I mean, that's a weird thing for a human to do, is to complain when you're in full traffic. We do it all the time. It's because it's impinging on your sense of having freedom. You're controlling something. Finally, you're controlling something in your life. And that's what texting is. When you avoid calls, not stupid calls, not someone just chatting, blah, 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 or if you're busy, you're working out. But when you're using text as a primary form of communication, it's because you were trying to seize back a little control in your life. You want a person to know that you are controlling your time. They're not just setting the phone down and ignoring it and training people that you can text me, but I'm not going to get it for 10 hours. They're actively, what's it called, breadcrumbing you, because they want to do everything over text so that they don't have to be sold or negotiate or argue. And it's a lack of emotional regulation.
So just for those who want to be aware, I may not text you back in the time that's appropriate for you, and don't take that the wrong way. I'm just not wired that way.
I turned off notifications and people were angry at me. I was like, it's like I don't answer the phone. I control my time, but you're going to let them control your texting stuff. The reality is you get too many. I silence it at night, and I don't want this to control. I turned off all the notifications because it messes with your brain. It's like same thing, computer, ding, 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 ding. You can't work. It messes with your concentration.
Yeah, it does.
But people get mad. Why are they mad that I'm not answering them back? So you have to train them. This is actually great for business. I taught my people never answer an email. Wait at least an hour. Unless it's like a true fire. Don't do it just because it's on there, because you're getting your dopamine rush and you'll be less effective. So ignore your email for at least an hour so that they know that you have at least an hour. And then look at the email, take the real time, read the whole thread, and respond back. Because you have to train people, because otherwise they think everything can be done instantly and they treat email like text. The problem with doing that over time is when you start becoming a monster. So if you text me, guess what I'm going to do to you, Frank? What do I do when you text me? I call you.
He call.
Frank doesn't
Every
mind.
time.
If he's busy, he doesn't, but I'm not going to carry a conversation on over text, because if you're sending me an article or I need you to meet at 7 o'clock, like our text stuff, we don't argue over text. We call when we're doing it, because the whole point is that you want to have a real conversation that's correct. You're a monster if you call someone. If you send me an email with 6 CCs, I'm going to reply just to you. And if you do it again, I'm going to pick up the phone and call you. You're like, how can you do that? I think I'm considered rude because I call you on Teams if you CC too many people.
Yeah, I think that protocol reminders are probably pretty helpful. Like, for me, I text when I have something that's not super urgent, but I'd like a call back, right? Or just a little notification, here's some information or whatever. But like a text is like, call, super urgent, and then an email, like, just get to it.
But startup culture is the
worst. I just hate
though.
that, like, back and forth text all the time. It might not be that important. Think about it before you send it again. Just think about it.
I couldn't hate startup communications culture more. But
what about this? What about this? What about this?
But then
Stop
I
it.
got into crypto and Web3 communications culture, and then I found ways to hate it more, because at least in startups, like, they constrain it to Teams or Slack or whatever your group messaging thing is. But then in Web3 and crypto culture, it's Telegram and Signal. So your personal communications channels get commingled with your business ones. And so then I can't manage my notifications intelligently, because I've got to leave my Telegram notifications on, because I want to see if some cool news comes across, or my friend texts me in the evening, or my wife texts me. And now I'm in all these other Telegram business groups.
I just will never forget years and years ago sitting on trading desks and, like, people totally illegal. Like, we all knew it was illegal, and people were still using AOL Instant Messenger. Like, compliance was like, stop it! And they were like, yeah, okay. Blue horseshoe. Not really. I'm joking. That never happened. I'm just saying.
How many years ago was that?
Yeah.
Blue horseshoe.
I think it's
Well
okay
done.
to say.
Well done.
But it was so funny
That's
that like these
obscure.
individual little like Telegram and what was the other one? Signal. It's like,
Signal.
okay, so we use this for this particular thing because that's what the cool kids in this particular industry do. It's like I should be wearing my hedgy uniform. Where's my vest?
Ironically, this is an argument for return to office.
No, because they'll
Because
still
text
use it.
and email are text-based.
Yeah.
You can't tell tone.
True.
You're basically sending, even if you're really good, only 5% of what you mean is coming through because 30% of human communication is tone, 50% of it is body language. Then you have context and you have the actual written text. So what happens is, let's say you're sending me bad things back and forth. If I call you, Teams message, or send an email, there's no way that you're not offended and a little hurt and a little scared for your job. But I can individually say, Marcus, well, I touched him, so I'm probably getting an HR assault, but
right.
there is a difference talking in person because you can let them know you're not in trouble. It's not a big deal. When you're doing this as a remote manager, you have to spend a lot of your time reassuring your people, hey, I need to talk to you on Monday. Here's what it's about. Because if you just say, I need to talk on Monday, they're like, oh, God, am I getting fired? Like, you can ruin your people accidentally. You have to spend so much time negotiating their possible emotional concerns. In office, you can see it. You can just address it quickly. So there is a lack in communications doing remote. Doesn't mean that the benefits don't outweigh it, but being in office, now the problem is what happens if you're a terrible manager and you basically talk to people the way you talk over text? That makes it even worse. So good management. If you want return to office, I want to see good management.
I mean, that was the conclusion that you and I reached when Sohail and you and I were talking about remote work. Like the failure for organizations to manage remotely is a failure of management. Like, I've managed remote organizations. Like SiliconANGLE was almost purely a remote organization. It's one of the most successful companies I've worked with, and it just required a technique of management that doesn't exist in most corporate cultures.
So Mark, who taught you that?
I figured it out.
You figured it out, and then who have you taught to do that, and how did you do that? Because again, we're getting back to the point. You know how to do it, and it's a failure.
Yeah.
But you learned it on your own, and we know that you learn differently than the average bear.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. So here we go. At the thing again, you might want to mentor someone to do that, and can you do that effectively when you're actually still working?
It is so hard not to burst into an infomercial for Mark and Jim's new management courses.
Well, I was going to slyly suggest on the air to bind us into doing it that maybe we do create like a Coursera or something.
Nah, we did that years ago, man. It's too much work. Josh keeps trying to get us to do it.
Yeah, sure. Okay, whatever.
You say that. If he's watching, now we're going to get phone calls. Finally, Bubba! I've been telling you for years, you got to do this.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, that's great.
But it is something it does. I mean, how do you, and how do you decide? I mean, they push a lot of it. Big companies do have some training and stuff they follow through, EQ and how to manage. There is some of that, but there's a subtlety. Human beings are weird and different, and you have to learn to accept it. And you're not going to do that.
Here's a wrinkle, and this is just a little personal funny. So I was on a conference call with some guys, and the weekend before, I had been up in a mountain, literally up in a mountain with my buddy. We were setting up some property up in Oklahoma, and very limited internet. And of course, I was trying to get some information from somebody, and I have an Android, and they have Apples. So of course, everything came in not only backwards, but like, because when you're texting, you have that stream of consciousness, and I was doing what you did, like 4 in a row. They came out super backwards. He thought I was hammered. And this is a work thing, a business thing. He thought I was lit, and I'm like, oh man. Okay, top of a mountain.
You must have been drunk to buy the Android, right?
I've had this thing for years. I refuse to go Apple. I refuse.
Who was I sitting with? I was sitting with someone who actually said they don't like to hire people who have Samsungs.
Everybody hates me.
Like,
every one of my friends hates me because I have an Android.
They're like, why would you do that? I'm like, they're better phones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not 2008. It's okay to have. I mean, I would never buy one. But
I mean, I launched satellites with my Android. What do you do with your iPhone? I mean, come on.
You're like, for business? Wow.
Wow, you just got wireless charging? That's amazing.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm glad I could add a little light humor there at the end.
There you go.
Me using a wireless charger is like Mark using a rotary dial.
Yeah.
It took me about 2 months because I started it and I was like, this doesn't seem to be charged. I had no clue what to do. It turns out there's a plug.
Yeah.
It's like a heater that you plug into. I just thought it was supposed to, I don't know, conduct it from the air or something. I wasn't going to read the instructions.
Oh,
I mean, I'm a
goodness.
tech guy, you know? I'm a tech guy. I can figure that
I
out.
saw that happen in an office recently. It was like one of these newfangled offices with the sit-stand desks, and on the sit-stand desk, it's got the wireless charger
Not plugged in.
pad. And this kid just kept it, and he was walking from one to the other. And I just look underneath, and you can see where the thing would plug into, and none of them were plugged in for that. And I was just going from desk. I was like, hey, it's not plugged in.
It's like the CEOs who used to have the fancy computer on the desk with no cords on it.
Right.
I remember the first time that happened. I'd hired a kid from Berkeley, and it was a staffing office in Los Angeles in the City of Hope building in 1999. And we had the big fax machine because we did a lot of paper resumes at the time. And I'm sitting in my office, and I see him over there, and then he starts, and I swear to God, it's like a Rowan Attenborough sitting. Like he's like a monkey. He's just lifting stuff up and copying as he's pulling things. And I'm like, what is going on there? And so I didn't say anything. And eventually he comes over and he's like, I need some help with the copy machine. I'm like, okay, come on. We'll come out and take a look at it, right? So we come out and I realized, so I looked at all the things. He goes, he thinks it's a jam. And what he had done is he put paper in the top. Oh, when it first started, I saw him jump. That's what it was. So he'd put the paper in the top and it had sucked it underneath because that's one of the functions of it.
Yeah.
He thought it was now lost, so he's like opening up the printer tray, and it was literally right there, ready to go.
Oh, goodness.
Berkeley, that's Berkeley for you.
Berkeley.
Oh, God, watching
Did
him
you
jump
say
back.
Rowan Attenborough?
Glenn
Yeah.
Atkinson.
Atkinson.
Who's the one that does the?
Mr.
Mr.
Bean.
Bean.
No, it's the one who does the. Here at the water holes, you see the buffaloes begin to come up.
Oh.
David Attenborough.
David
Attenborough,
Attenborough.
yeah.
Right.
It was David Attenborough commentating
Well, look,
on Rowan Atkinson.
Both of those, honestly, both of those guys would fit. Yes, great.
Yes.
Look at the monkeys.
That actually would be amazing. He would do a good job at that.
So as we close out the show, all four of us were at HR Southwest Conference this week. If any thoughts do you have on the conference? I know we all interviewed a bunch of people. A lot of us asked the same questions over and over to kind of get some montage or man on the street type questions answered. Any kind of themes or thoughts or
I think the biggest
conclusions?
one for you guys haven't been to HR conferences before.
No,
right?
that was my first one. Yeah.
The biggest thing, and people make fun of HR, but the reality is almost everybody there was there to learn. You don't see that at most conferences. They're usually there to network or to sell, but the attendees, of which there were at least 1,400, were there to learn, and they were curious. They were asking questions. They're relatively informed. That's really bizarre to see that.
It felt like an enterprise show to me, a lot like some of the enterprise vendor shows I used to go to for theCUBE, where there's a ton of learning sessions, but there's less sales going on.
I was surprised just at how many people were going to all the breakouts, going to the boardrooms, and we're just like, because we were
Well,
on
they
the
get credit
floor
for
for
it
the
too.
they get credit, but for
they
being
enjoyed
on
it.
the ground and waiting for people to walk by, and there weren't as many people walking by, and you knew that they were sold out, and then they'd have the breaks, and then they'd come down, but just like there are really either a lot of concerns out there that they're trying to address and trying to figure out and learn, which is great too, or they really just like to learn. I like to think of HR as the soul of a company, right? You know, if the C of all the C's, right? The CHRO and the HR function is really looking out for their employees and benefits and health and well-being and things like that. And the rest of the C's are worried about keeping the other company alive. And to see that love and curiosity was pretty exciting. That was really neat.
Especially
Now,
for smaller and mid-sized companies.
I will say I had over-prepared. I really expected, I was going to give this grand presentation, expecting it to be very, very business-oriented, and I had to shift. Like I just like was more like fireside chat because it's not totally different culture than I'm used to. So it was really, it was very enlightening.
Yeah. Also, there were dogs.
There were dogs.
There were dogs.
And for the first time, mimosas and Bloody Marys at 10 in the morning. So I think I know what I'm doing next year.
Yeah, I missed
gonna
I missed the
50
mimosas.
I'll be the guy trying to get that contract. Yeah,
It was a good conference. I'm glad
The other thing that I would notice is that there's your speech out there on the screen. So, but the
I
other
was
thing I
going to
noticed.
say, Frank, I don't know what you mean over-prepared. I don't know.
Oh
what you're
yeah.
talking
Show
about.
the
This-
crowd shot.
Yes, we have to have the disclaimer, you know.
Everybody at once today?
Session
Already?
full.
How was it? Was it good? I didn't eat anything yet.
So
Yes,
yeah, there it is.
Pretty packed.
It's a good crowd.
Yeah.
So,
Probably get on the
but
gist
yeah,
of
no.
it as well.
The thing that I noticed from the show was everybody there, because we asked what session are you here to learn about. Everybody there is concerned about AI. Like everybody wanted to learn about what was going on in AI, how that was going to affect the workplace, not just HR, but like in general, like what it is. So there's that is the chief concern. Nobody was saying crypto. Nobody was saying blockchain. Everyone's saying AI. So I think for those that watch this show, that's a signal to take in terms of where you need to be spending your time and interest and resources looking into.
And we definitely going to have to look at creating some guardrails for them. There was some real interest in that from HR. Like, what do I do in my employee handbook? What am I supposed to say? It was similar to social media 25 years ago.
Right.
Where having a blog could get you fired. Having a LinkedIn profile was actually something some CEOs hated because it meant you were looking for a job. So people had to go pseudonymous for a long time. And then eventually the employee handbooks became, don't do stupid stuff. Don't do the stuff online that you're doing. If we get a phone call, you're fired. Stop being a jerk online, basically. Because that's the correct way to do it, is do what you want, but don't get us in trouble. That's the same thing that's going to happen with some of these LLMs, because people are using them. If they're using IM, if they're not using IM on the trading floor, they're certainly using AI in the HR.
The beginning
the
code
cubicle.
of conduct boilerplate or template that I use for all organizations I start, especially in crypto, is don't make me write rules on this page. So if you make me write a rule, it's going to be a problem for you.
It's too bad that can't hold up legally for large corporations.
Right?
Yeah, if I have to write it down, you're doing it wrong.
Yes.
That's pretty funny.
Well, I just got a notification that there's a package at U.S. Postal Service from a +44 number. So I think maybe we should wrap and I can go pick up my postage.
Okay.
Yeah, don't forget to stop by and get the gift cards, the Apple gift cards.
Oh, right, yeah.
Because that's what the post office takes.
Yeah,
now.
that's what I was texting you while we were on the air.
I'm going to send you a check, deposit it in your bank, but go ahead and purchase some computer equipment for me.
Very well.
Thank you.
I'm still shocked that still works as a scam, but we'll talk about that another time.
I'm sure. Yeah. Well, that'll definitely come up. So anyway, thanks for joining us this week. We had a wide and varied discussion, a lot of cool stuff, and we'll do it again next week if you join us. Hey, thanks for watching The Merge. We've got a ton more stuff for you to watch on YouTube, on Instagram, on TikTok, everywhere. Check us out.